All right, today we're going to look at grafting our desirable heirloom onto our Estamino rootstock. And I thought I'd show you first what is going on with the self-graft. We did that 2 days ago, and it's been in the dark and in a warm environment. And you can see the humidity build up in our healing chamber bag, but I'll see whether I can get any kind of feel for how that's doing at all. Not sure how much you can tell, but there you can see the graft itself. Again, looks pretty tight. Looks like there's no real problems, no real wilting. So this one's doing okay. We're gonna put it back into the warm environment. I have it near sort of a heater unit that's coming out, and it's dark. It's not pitch black dark, but it's pretty dark where it's sitting. It's not in indirect light. Here again is our Estamino rootstock. You can tell it looks a little different than your average tomato. Here is what we're going to graft onto it. And to me, that looks much more like a normal tomato seedling. But in any case, it's grown and selected to have really good characteristics for the root. You can kind of tell it's got crazy rooting already. So again, really good at putting energy from the roots into whatever you're going to graft on top. And this is a generative rootstock. Estamino really puts a lot more of its energy into fruit production rather than just vegetative. So it depends what you're looking for, but this is the rootstock we're going to go for outdoor heirloom type tomatoes that are grafted onto the rootstock to get a little better yield and some of the disease resistance that we talked about. Okay, so again, the first step is always to gather all your supplies. We've got our true rootstock and our scion. We've got our grafting clips, okay, and I've got a couple to show you just to get a feel. So there's a variety of different types of grafting clips. Probably the most popular are those little silicone ones. Here is, I believe, a 1.5 millimeter grafting clip without the little extra tube attachment that I'll show you in a second. So again, kind of nice depending on the size of the stem. Our plants are getting a little big for this one, so you can kind of tell this isn't ideal. And when you get slightly bigger plants, you could go something with a clip graft, okay? This has the possibility of also using that little hole for a stake or using the little ring part of it. I find these ones, despite looking really easy to use, they don't seem to hold on to the plant as nicely as the silicone graft. And I also think the disadvantage of this is that they tend to, well, they push off a little bit easier than they should. And also, I think they tend to make it so that it's easier to go with too big of a stem. So just be aware you don't want your stem to get too big or the graft is a little harder for the plant to accomplish. Okay, the one I'm going to have you use, and it's in your little grafting kit, is this one. It's a 2 millimeter graft, and it looks like it's hardly big enough at all to fit over there, but it'll be okay. We'll really stretch it out. But what I like about it for doing these little projects at home is it also gives you this little ring to put a stake in, and I'll show you that as we go along. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just get all our stuff together. We've got our clips, we've got our 2 plants that are going to be the rootstock and the graft. We even have a little healing chamber. I put a little moisture in there so it'll be able to get humid right away. And again, just like we mentioned, we would normally cut below the cotyledons. I'm going to remove them just to get some of the mess out of our way here. Okay, so no big deal how you remove them. Just get those out of there. But I do want to mention that this rootstock has some little growth potential coming out of that, little nodes or root or axils of the leaf where the cotyledons were. And so again, I worry about that a little bit. We're gonna watch it. If those sprout, you're gonna get this guy coming through as your plant because it's a pretty tough plant. So we'll keep an eye on those because we have such a short distance on this particular plant, meaning it's kind of hard to get way down low and do the cut below the cotyledon, which is my preference. I'm gonna actually go above the cotyledons on this one. I think it'll be okay, and the advantage is when we grow and go really low to the soil, there's also the possibility that your scion actually starts rooting itself, and then you lose the added benefit of going to your rootstock. So we're going to go above the cotyledons, and we'll see how that goes. But we're going to have to keep an eye to cut off any growth that comes from our rootstock. All right, and the key here is to try to get your angle at that 45 or slightly less, so it's a little long, and that gives you more chance for the connections of the cambium to reform. So I'm going to just do this one, and once I set this and cut it off, you'll kind of see that's the angle I have to match. So here's the angle. It's a little hard to see on this one. Okay, so there's my cut angle. I'll go a little further away so it's clearer, okay? And that's the same thing you'll see above or below, but you can kind of tell, and that's now the angle I have to match on my scion. Okay, so I can kind of use this as a guide. This particular sign has two plants. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to cut one off. This allows me to use the other plant as a comparison for how it's doing compared to the grafted. So I'm going to go ahead and pull one of those that's about the same size as what I just took. And sometimes your little one that you pull can become a nice guide. So I can kind of match both the size of the stem, and I can also match the cut angle. All right. So we're going to put those two together, and I'm going to see how well I can do on making the cut here about the same. You don't really have to line them up like I'm doing, but sometimes that reminds me my goal. Okay. All right, so there's a cut stem. I'm not really worried about this anymore because I'm just going to leave that plant to do its thing. But now I can remove, I've gone above the cotyledon for this one, and that is a good idea. Just gives it a little more strength. I'm going to remove these leaves that are a little bigger. It gives me a little more room to work. Please be careful with the razor blade. Okay, and that's fine. I could even take a little more off of this. Remember that what you're grafting to has to completely deal with giving water to that new tissue. So sometimes it's actually better when you're a little bit less tissue. So that's why we remove it. So now we go and we add our grafting clip to our rootstock. I try to get it right in the middle. This is kind of a long one, so we're going to have to kind of put it a little at the top. Down the middle, nice tight connection, and then we'll be able to slip the other one in. Okay, it's a little smaller than sometimes I like, but it'll be okay. Okay, and then I look back at my angle on this one, my angle on this one, and you can tell I've got it a little shorter. The good news is you can always go back and don't just shave it off, but give it a fresh cut to get the angle you want. So I like that one a little better. It's a little longer. We're going to go in there. Okay. Push that into there and set the angle tight. These two have to make a good connection. One more cut here. Okay. All right, we're going to try that butterfly clip because this one actually is a little bigger. All right, so here you can see the advantage of that bigger plant. You need to make that connection. Same story, really tight. And I find these a little harder to work with, so. Have set it in there, I've checked it, a little harder for you to see with this one, but this one may make it. I had a little struggle on how wide the tissue was, so Okay, gonna let that one go. Again, we'll add the stake on what we did. So this one is our carbon cyan grafted to our Estamino rootstock. Here again, I didn't use the regular clip with it, but you can put in a little stake through this hoop as well to just help stabilize your plant as you're putting it in. You want to give it as much chance as possible to take. All right, then we put on our high humidity. We've added water to our little bag, and we take the rubber band, put it around the top and the bottom, and then you've got that high humidity chamber. Okay, and this one, again, will go into an area where it can heal over and try to get that graft union to take.